right, so it's been a little over a month since we planted these sweet potatoes, and as you can see, all 4 of them are actually producing vines. These 2 were very slow to start. You might have saw growth maybe a week ago, but these other 2, as you can see, are really taking off. In particular, this shoot right here, the vines are now outgrowing the container space, so we have to pluck some of these. We had one fall off already, so we're putting them in these little containers for now. But as you can see, there are roots already growing. There's actually very tiny roots growing off of this little one as well. So officially right now we would have 2 different sweet potato plants with roots that could produce sweet potatoes. So we are going to pluck off, I'm going to say down to here, and immediately stick this one in some water. Probably was not the cleanest, but probably not the cleanest way to do that. This is the first time we've ever done this, so all of this is experimental to us. So I'm gonna just put that in that water like so, and we're gonna see. But now we have the space that we can re-water the container, and we can put this dome or this lid back over it, so all of the other 100+ possible shoots that we have can keep growing and get stronger.
Digging up runners.
Digging up some raspberry runners. We got a pretty sizable one here. Letting it soak in the water for probably like 30 minutes or so. And then I thought I dug up one more, but it was actually 3 separate ones that all grew up next to each other. So I'm going to transplant all of these as well, and hopefully they can be 4 new raspberry plants.
Is there water in that? Those are big too.
So we will see.
So I figured I'd give you a little garden tour. Starting off with our almond tree, we transplanted this spring, And it started off looking really good, but all the leaves have burned off. I'm not sure if that's transplant shock or what's going on there, so we'll have to do some research. The peach trees, all three, look really strong and healthy. We've had some good new growth. The outer two flowered and looked really pretty. They're not strong enough to support fruit yet, so even if they had fruited, we wouldn't have let them stay on. Moving on to the pear trees, also looking really great this year. We've had some solid new growth since Billy cut them back a few weeks ago. Like all of this up here is all new just this spring, and these will continue growing throughout the season. Now across the driveway we've got our wildflower patch, the 500 square feet of wildflowers that we planted for the flower farm. We have a lot of seedlings coming up through here. It's just hard to see because of the straw. But we can tell that there's some bachelor buttons, as well as some cosmos and rudbeckia already coming up. As you saw earlier in the video, we have had to go through several times and just kind of rake and even out the straw because the wind and the rain keep pushing everything over and piling it up. But hopefully after our last frost, which is scheduled to be next week, we'll be able to take all of this straw off and let the flowers really just come through. Moving on to our apple trees, the galas, which are the two at the end, flower first. They flowered last week, looked really pretty, but we had to go ahead and take all the flowers off because they're not strong enough to support fruit yet. But we want the tree to focus on growing, and so that's why we take the flowers off. But all of the trees, you can tell that there's some solid new growth coming in since we trimmed them back. And just like the pears, those will continue or should continue to branch out and grow stronger and more throughout the season. And this is our second Honeycrisp. And the Honeycrisps haven't flowered yet. The Honeycrisp and the Golden Delicious are typically a little bit later than the galas. And over here in our front flower bed, that's just for our own personal use, the snapdragons that we replant every year actually stayed over the winter this year and came back in full force. They look so pretty, and we're so pleased with how they're doing. And in this very front bed, we're going to plant our hobby sunflowers as well. So we're going to have to take this sweet shrub out at some point. We're not sure what we're going to do with it just yet, whether we'll give it to somebody or we'll just move it somewhere else on the property. But it will not stay there. And over here, our peonies look amazing. I'm so excited to see these guys bloom. They are getting ready to be harvested. And you can tell because if you squish it and it feels like a marshmallow, that means they're ready to go. Now over here is our wisteria. We're trying to train this wisteria vine into being a freestanding tree. So Billy has come out over the weekend and reinforced this stake. I need to come out and kind of attach it to the stake a little bit better so that it continue to grow a stronger trunk, and hopefully in a few years we'll be able to take the stake off and it'll be able to stand on its own. Now you can see the trap right there by the garden bed, and we have a little rabbit problem that we're working on. Over here, Billy just planted a random plant pack of seeds, so we'll see if those take. The butterfly bushes are growing incredibly fast. They always do. We basically cut them back to the ground every year, and every year they get bigger and better, and they smell incredible too. The pollinators love them. The hummingbirds really love them. That's why we planted them over here next to the garden. This one too, you can see new growth coming in at the bottom, new growth coming up on old wood. I just adore these butterfly bushes. As for the veggies, we had to replant all of our spinach. None of them came up. And as you saw earlier in the video, Billy thinned out the lettuce as well. The lettuce all looks great. And the peas are looking amazing, coming up really nice and strong. Almost every single one of them took to the trellises on their own. Some of them need a little bit more help, like these guys here. And unfortunately, it's just so windy this time of year. From about September to October, it's just constant harsh winds. So those should start to calm down, hopefully at the end of April and beginning of May. Should be a little less windy and our plants will be able to really thrive. But for right now, unfortunately, the wind can be a little much. You can see most of these guys took to the trellis pretty quickly. As for our garlic, the garlic is still looking really good. We thought, unfortunately, that we had lost all of it when we had a really, really bad snowstorm in January. But fortunately, almost every single one came back, and the stalks are nice and thick. Looking forward to digging these up in a few months and seeing what we've got underneath all that dirt. And the carrots all germinated too. We were worried that some of them wouldn't, because a lot of the seed packets that we planted were really old, but they all seem to have taken. They're getting their true leaves, so we're looking forward to getting some good carrots this year too. Speaking of carrots, as I said earlier, we've got a little bunny problem. So Billy has been coming out and putting up chicken wire around the garden beds. This is just temporary until we can catch the bunny and relocate it. So he started getting some up around here. He was able to get the herb garden fully covered. And we plan on next Monday coming out here and planting out all of our herbs. So looking forward to seeing this herb garden finally full. And we've got our first flowers on the flower farm, finally. The bachelor's buttons have opened. We've harvested several already. But these guys are just so cute and vibrant. These ones that are big and blooming, all self-seeded from last year. This was a little patch that I had planted out. So back here, where there wasn't any that self-seeded, I planted more bachelor's buttons, different colors too. So hopefully those will grow stronger. And the raspberries look amazing. We've already got flowers. We've had a really, really mild winter and a very warm spring. So we've got tons of buds already on just about every single one of our raspberry plants. Hopefully that means we'll get some raspberries in early May or mid-May. Typically they start coming in around the beginning of June, and we'll consistently get raspberries, especially off of this plant, until as far as November. The raspberries are amazing. We love them. Unfortunately, our kids love them too, and so we don't get to ever make jam or anything with them because the kids eat them right off the plant before we can get to them. The blackberries, though, they only bloom once, or we only get blackberries once. It's typically around July. So our blackberries, these first two are covered in buds and flowers. The vinier ones, though, like this one here, we won't get flowers off of that until much later. But like I said, the blackberries are one and done. Same with the blueberries. Now, Billy had thought that these little blueberry plants died this winter, but they've all come back. They're just really tiny. So we need to get them to focus on growing a little bit more. But as for our older blueberry plants, we have lots of flowers on them. Not tons, but more than we've ever had. So hopefully we'll be able to get at least a few blueberries this year. I think he mentioned in an earlier video that the blueberry plants are the bane of our existence. And it's so true. We try and try and try. We rarely ever get anything. So last year we got not a single flower. This year we've got a lot more flowers than we've ever had. So hopefully, fingers crossed, saying prayers, that we get some blueberries this year. The strawberries, however, are a completely different story. Our strawberries do so well. These are Ozark strawberries, and they produce from early May all the way through September or even October. As you can see, they're covered in flowers. We've already got some little baby strawberries coming in, and looking forward to being able to have some fresh strawberries. The barley and wheat that Billy planted a few weeks ago is coming up really, really nicely. It still has a ways to go because the barley at least can get up to 2 to 3 feet high. So we want to let it get a little bit taller before we hack it down and feed it to the chickens. Over on this side of the fence, we've got even more raspberries. Again, more buds and flowers. This was a transplant from last year, a runner that was sent up. And you'll see all these stakes, these green stakes around. Those are just marking where new runners are coming up so that, one, Billy or I don't hit them with a weed whacker or with a mower, and also so that our kids know that they're there and don't step on them. And these are the transplants that Billy just planted out here a few days ago from over in the one corner. They're not looking great, but I think that's just initial transplant shock. These ones, though, seem to have held up really well and transplanted over really well. So hopefully some of these, if not all of them, will take, and we'll be able to have basically a living fence along this side. Now these cinder blocks we just filled with compost and dirt. This is where we plan on planting all of our giant sunflowers for the chickens. But we do still have some herbs left over here from last year. This is catmint. It's really taken off so far. So I may transplant this. I may just leave it here since it's doing so well. I'm not sure yet. We've also got some borage that's self-seeded from last year. Our sweet mint that I like to keep by the chicken coop and just throw in there every now and then. And our lavender that I planted last year, which is covered in buds. I'm so excited about this. I love using lavender. And lastly, we have our goji berries. We cut these suckers down every year, all the way to the ground, basically to nothing. And every year they come up bigger and better than ever. And that's it for our garden tour.